Dust and Determination, A Long Road Home by Geraldo Diego. Chapter 1. The Night of Fire. The darkness of night lingered over Jedediah Thompson's small farm in the New Mexico territory, the kind of quiet that settled deep into the bones of a man who'd worked the land all his life. It was 1854, and Jed, a widower of 4 years, slept fitfully in the modest house he had built with his late wife, Mary. She died giving birth to their son, Samuel, leaving Jed to raise him and his older sister, Emily, alone. At 38, Jed's hands were calloused, his shoulders broad, but his heart carried a weight heavier than any plow. The silence shattered when the thunder of hooves and wild shouts tore through the night. Jed bolted upright, heart hammering, and grabbed the rifle propped against the wall. "Emily, Samuel," he called, but no answer came from the children's room. Barefoot and in his nightshirt, he stumbled outside into chaos. Flames roared from the barn, casting an eerie glow over the yard. Dark figures on horseback whooped and hollered, driving the cows out of the holding pen. "Bandits!" Jed raised his rifle, shouting, "Stop!" A shot cracked into the air, but the raiders only laughed. A scarred man sneered at him. "Looky here, boys. This farmer thinks he's a hero." Jed's eyes scanned the chaos, landing on his children near the well. Emily, 10, clutching 6-year-old Samuel, both wide-eyed with terror. Before he could reach them, a bandit snatched Emily, hoisting her onto his horse. Another grabbed Samuel, throwing him over a saddle. "No!" Jed roared, lunging forward, rifle aimed. But the world slipped back into the darkness of night with a sudden blow, struck to the back of his head. He awoke to silence, the sky getting lighter, but the sun not yet above the eastern horizon. The barn was a smoldering ruin, his livestock scattered, and worst of all, his children missing. Blood matted his hair, but the pain was nothing compared to the hollow ache in his chest. Why? Why would anybody do this? His mind reeled, remembering bits and pieces of the atrocious events just hours before. Staggering to his feet, "I have to find them." He shook his head, trying to think. He stood up straight, squared his shoulders, and vowed, "I will find you, whatever it takes." Chapter 2. The Price of Pursuit. By the time the sun had officially began the day, Old Man Jenkins, a grizzled neighbor, arrived to find Jed sitting amidst the wreckage, bandaging his head with a torn shirt. "They took everything," Jed said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. "But I ain't staying. I am going after my kids." Jenkins nodded. "You'll need money, Jed. Sell what's left. I'll help." Over the next few days, Jed parted with nearly all he owned: 21 cows, 3 goats, 2 workhorses, the anvil and forge he had used to mend tools, and the plow that had carved their livelihood from the earth. He kept only Bessie, his favorite mare, a sturdy chestnut who'd carried him through Mary's death and beyond. The sales fetched $500, a fortune for a farmer, and with it, he bought a bedroll, ammunition, jerked beef, and a tattered map of the territory. As he saddled Bessie and rode from the farm, the sun dipped low, painting the horizon red. He didn't look back. His children were out there, and every mile ahead was a step toward them. Chapter 3. The Search Begins. Jed's first stop was Willow Creek, a dusty town 15 miles east. The sheriff, a wiry man named Hargrave, listened to his tale with a furrowed brow. "Bandits, you say? Plenty of them round here. No word on kids, though. I'll keep an ear out." Jed posted reward notices, $50 for any news of Emily and Samuel, nailing them to posts and saloon walls. A man called Slim Pete approached him outside the general store, a wiry tracker with a tobacco-stained grin. "I know them bandit trails," he claimed. "For $50, I will find your young'uns." Eager to make any sort of progress and desperate for a hint, Jed paid him, only to wait 3 days before realizing Pete had vanished with his money. The betrayal stung, but it steeled Jed's resolve. He would only trust his own grit from now on. Chapter 4. The Harsh Road. The months stretched into a year, then 2, as Jed roamed the territory. Winter descended like a vengeful spirit as he crossed the Sangre de Cristo Mountains, chasing a rumor of a bandit camp. Snow fell in blinding sheets, the wind a relentless howl. Bessie's hooves slipped on ice, and Jed's fingers turned numb. Near collapse, he spotted a cave and stumbled inside, leading Bessie to shelter. He built a fire with scavenged wood, its flickering light dancing on the walls. For 3 days, the blizzard raged, forcing him to ration his dwindling supplies, hardtack, and a few strips of beef. Jed melted snow for water. Bessie nickered softly, her warmth a comfort as Jed whispered, "Well, make it, girl. We have to." For them. He remembered when they were young, Emily would try to teach Sam how to talk and cipher figures. An uncooperative little cuss, Sam was more interested in trying to swing from her long curls than mimicking her words. His thoughts brought comfort along with an unlikely source of additional warmth. When the storm broke, he pressed on, weaker but alive. Summer brought its own trials. Crossing a sun-scorched plain, the heat pressed down like a branding iron, reminding him of the time he was forging new shoes for Oscar, the lead plow horse. He was supposed to be watching Emily, 5 at the time, and curious as a young barn cat. Distracted by her pursuit of a small toad, he reached too far past the bellows and scorched his hand despite the protection of a thick rawhide glove. Jed's thoughts returned present and to the trail ahead. His canteen ran dry and his lips cracked. Visions of Mary and the children swam before him as he swayed in the saddle. Just as despair crept in, he stumbled onto an oasis. Actually, it was not much more than a trickle of water amid the scrub. He drank deeply, refilled his canteen, and thanked whatever Providence had spared him. Chapter 5. Enemies and Allies. Bandits plagued his path. The day was turning to dusk. As he camped by a dry creek, 3 riders emerged from the shadows, pistols gleaming. "Hand over your horse and coin," their leader barked. Jed's rifle was in hand before they could blink. "Not today," he growled, firing a warning shot. A brief, chaotic skirmish followed, bullets whizzing past, Bessie rearing as Jed ducked behind a boulder. He winged one bandit, and the others fled, but not before a graze burned across his arm. He bandaged it with a strip of cloth, cursing his luck but grateful to keep moving. Law enforcement offered little aid and occasional grief. In a town called Dusty Hollow, a marshal mistook Jed for a wanted horse thief, his weathered look and lone travel raising suspicion. "You match the poster," the marshal grunted, locking him in a cell. 3 days passed before a telegraph cleared his name, but the delay gnawed at him. "Time's slipping away," he muttered, riding out with renewed urgency. Yet kindness flickered amid the hardship. An old prospector shared his meager campfire one night, regaling Jed with tales of lost gold. Jed suspected the weathered wildcatter, who was almost totally camouflaged by his own beard, was lonely and eager for conversation with someone other than Jackrabbit, the prospector's mule. Another time, a settler family fed him stew and let him sleep in their barn. Once, a preacher in a clapboard church clasped his hands and prayed, "Keep faith, son. The Lord sees your struggle." Each encounter bolstered Jed, reminding him that the best of humanity lingered even in the wild. Chapter 6. The Trail's Toll. Years wore on, and Jed's $500 dwindled. He took odd jobs, shoeing horses with skills from his forging days, herding cattle for a day's wage, but the money slipped through his fingers like sand. Fatigue seeped into his bones. His once dark hair was now streaked with gray. False leads piled up. A child's shoe that wasn't Samuel's. A girl's braids seen in a bandit camp that wasn't Emily's. Each dead end carved deeper lines into his face, but a scrap of cloth, Emily's favorite blue ribbon with pale pink coral beads sewn into the ends, found near a riverbank, kept hope alive. One night, camped under the vast Pecos sky, Jed spoke to Mary's memory. "I ain't giving up, darling. They're out there, and I'll bring them home." The stars offered no reply, but his resolve was set, hardened by grit and determination. Chapter 7. The Breakthrough. In the 4th year of his long search, Jed rode into Silverton, a bustling town near the Colorado border. At 42, he felt decades older, his body a weather-worn map of scars and weariness. He had finished the first full meal he had had in months. While nursing a whiskey in the neighboring saloon, he overheard two ranch hands talking. Montgomery found him in the woods a couple years back, one said. Kids, a girl and a boy, hiding out after escaping some no-good bandits. Jed's pulse quickened. Excuse me, he interrupted, voice rough. About those children. What do you know? The man scratched his beard. The girl would be about 14 by now. The boy's probably 10, I guess. They are living with Charles Montgomery on his ranch, a day's ride north of here. It fit. Emily would be 14, Samuel 10. Jed bolted upright, his chair scraping the floor. Where's this ranch? The man gave directions, and Jed was on Bessie within minutes, riding hard through the night, hope flaring like a beacon. Chapter 8. Reunion. The rocking Double M, the Montgomery's ranch, sprawled across lush land, a grand house flanked by barns and corrals. Jed dismounted, dusty and disheveled, as a tall man with a trimmed beard approached. Can I help you? He asked, his voice firm but curious. I am Jedediah Thompson, Jed said, throat tight. I think you have my children, Emily and Samuel. Charles Montgomery's eyes widened. Your children? The ones we found, Jed nodded. Lost them 4 years ago to bandits. Been out searching ever since. Montgomery studied him, then gestured. Follow me. He led Jed to the backyard, where the two children played with a shaggy dog. The girl was tall, her brown hair in a braid. The boy sturdy with a mop of curls. They looked healthy and cared for. Emily? Samuel? Jed called, voice trembling. They turned, confusion on their faces. Emily tilted her head, then whispered, Huh? Samuel's eyes lit up. Ah! They ran to him, and Jed dropped to his knees, pulling them into his arms. Tears streaked his weathered cheeks as he murmured, I found you. I finally found you. Memories stirred, Emily recalling his lullabies. Samuel, his strong hands lifting him onto Bessie. The years apart melted away in that embrace, faster than a spring thaw. Chapter 9. A New Dawn. Later, Montgomery approached Jed, who still held his children's hands. I see what they mean to you, he said. Takes a rare man to stick with it and chase them across half the West. I would do anything for these two. Jed replied, his eyes still brimming. In all these years, they haven't forgotten. Emily sings a goodnight song to our little ones that she says you used to sing to her. Sam often brags about how strong Pa is. Montgomery recalled. He paused for a moment. I need a foreman, someone with grit and know-how. You've got both. The job is yours if you want it. It comes with a house for you and the kids. Jed blinked, stunned. A house? Work? Sir, I am. You've earned it. Montgomery cut in. What do you say? Jed looked at Emily and Samuel, their smiles bright. Yes, sir, I'll take it. Thank you. Days later, they settled into a cozy cabin on the ranch, its hearth warm, its walls sturdy. Jed stood on the porch that first evening, watching Emily and Samuel try to catch fireflies in a makeshift net. The weight of 4 years had been lifted and replaced by peace. He'd lost a farm, a fortune, and nearly himself, but he'd gained back his family, his purpose, and a home.